We had been talking about moving south for a long time, but we also both had the careers. We had bought the house, the car, we had kids, but we just always felt like there's something pulling us for one more big adventure. And then we just found ourselves in a situation where the universe was giving us a nudge and saying, you guys have been looking for an adventure. This is the time. We just sold the house, packed up the kids. So we just pulled the trigger and booked an Airbnb and just left. There were definitely times where you'd be like, what have we done? We did it all and we made all the mistakes.
That whole experience taught me to trust myself a lot more and not worry so much about what people will think while you're in the process, because sometimes you second guess yourself.
I think when you go with your heart and your guts, it's your body telling you, listen, it's time for a change. Let's do it. As much as you can get pushed through the fear, just go and jump and make it happen.
Hello, and welcome to a new episode of The Career Changers. Today, we are happy to welcome Steph and Luke, the couple behind the new reality show Betting on Paradise, premiering on Max and Discovery Plus. The story is a wild ride. During the pandemic, they left behind their life in Canada, bought a broken-down hotel in Costa Rica, and built it from the ground up, all while raising kids, struggling with money, navigating relationships, and filming it all for national TV. Today, we will discuss their career journeys and the ultimate career pivot, how Steph and Luke built a new life in Costa Rica. Steph, Luke, we are so thrilled to have you here. Welcome to the Career Changers.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
So this is really exciting. So let's start to discover something about yourself. Where did you grow up and what was your dream job when you were a child?
Oh gosh, I don't even know. I don't even think my dream job, I don't even know what my dream job was. My dream job was honestly just to do something where I could travel, have adventures, really.
Yeah, and mine was similar. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a safari man. I actually wanted to live and work in the jungle, probably with animals. That was basically, wasn't working with animals, but we got there eventually in the jungles of Costa Rica.
You had some adventurous intention already. And what did you end up studying then? That's cool.
I ended up studying psychology in like college and university for a little bit.
And I was a jack of all trades. I'd done like every job possible, but I actually went to school to be an arborist. So I was like climbing up trees with chainsaws 80 feet in the air and cutting them down, and then eventually gave up the chainsaw and put on some business shoes. And I eventually got into like corporate sales. Last like 10 years.
And what was your first job? First job at all?
First job at all? Oh my gosh. I think it was like a video. Remember videos?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. Rogers. Good old Rogers Video. Yeah, that was like my first job ever.
And I was a dishwasher at a restaurant. I think I started working when I was 13 years old. I think I've been working since then, too. I haven't stopped having a job since.
I was 16?
Yeah. Got started nice and early.
And so what did you do? How was your career before your bold career pivot?
So mine went from, I always did like manual labor, construction, that sort of thing. So I had a bit of a background in that for 10 years. We actually met, we were both English teachers in Taiwan though. That's where we met. So we had been doing that. And then when we came back from Taiwan, I owned a landscaping and tree company in the city for a while. But that was really tough because in Canada, especially, you're on the drastic season. So in the winter time, there wasn't much money coming in. And then eventually I got into corporate sales, which was what I was doing for the last 7-8 years before we made the big leap.
We met teaching English, and then I came back and just decided to get into hospitality. And I think my first career job was like at the crappy Ramada, like a 2-star hotel, starting out there, and then just worked in different hotels and tried to increase every time I switched jobs with like a nicer hotel, a higher end hotel, and then just ended up at my dream place, which was working for Four Seasons before we moved to Cook, pretty much.
And so then you reached the point where you took the leap. What inspired you to leave behind your life in Canada and take on the challenge of rebuilding a hotel in Costa Rica? Is it something you were dreaming of doing before, or what happened all of a sudden?
I think what happened, we had been talking about moving south. We'd never been to Costa Rica, but we heard good things. We had been talking about moving south for a long time, but we also both had the careers. We had bought the house, the car, we had kids. Like, we are pretty rooted in Toronto, but we just always felt like there's something pulling us for one more big adventure. And then the pandemic happened and my company sent me home. They eliminated her position at Four Seasons. Like hospitality went from 100 to 0. And we just found ourselves in a situation where the universe was giving us a nudge and saying, you guys have been looking for an adventure. This is the time. We're going to give you permission now. So when that happened, I think we were a little nuts, but we just sold the house, packed up the kids. And it was also because the pandemic, we need to leave in a certain amount of time before the real lockdowns happen. So we also were on a timeline. So we did everything in a matter of months. Yeah. And that was it. We could see the writing on the wall. Canada gets really cold in the winter. And we just didn't want to be stuck in a house with the kids trying to work. And so we just pulled the trigger and booked an Airbnb and just left.
Yeah.
Wow. How did you manage the fear and the risk associated with such a drastic lifestyle change?
It was scary, I think, but because we both lived abroad when we were in our 20s, we lived in Taiwan. Early 2000s, there wasn't even barely internet. There was no Google Translate. There was no MapQuest. So I think in my mind, if I could handle that at 25 and there was no Google Maps, you'd have barely even had cameras. We had barely any cell phones.
Yeah.
I was thinking now at this day and age, traveling to a new country, it's so much easier now because there's so many things, so many resources when you move to another country. I think that was more appealing than trying to look for new jobs. Like for me anyway, because I had lost my job, everyone got laid off, and so we can either stay here and continue, and I'd have to basically find another career job to fall back into, right?
In a hospitality where there was zero jobs.
And at that time, hospitality was dead. Like nobody was hiring or anything. So I would have just had to do something else completely. So I think what is keeping us here? Like just our house, our car. There wasn't like everything was canceled. Kids weren't in school.
And I think the pandemic was a blessing in disguise because everybody knows that we're at home with kids. They like caution taped off the playgrounds. You couldn't do anything. So it's almost like the fear of staying here and being isolated in our house was greater than the fear of saying, let's just go to a beach somewhere and we can at least be outdoors and stuff like that. So I think that just the scenario we were in helped a lot.
For sure.
Yeah. And how did you handle financial setbacks while keeping your vision alive? Because I guess going for this new adventure was not something super easy to do.
With that one, luckily, I was still able to keep my job for a couple of years while we were there when we got the hotel. But then when it was starting to go is I ended up leaving my job and it was full on. We had to put all of our life savings in there. And then as the project kept getting bigger, we ended up having to I had to go ahead and sell and try and find folks that would invest in the property and come on board with us and that. So that was the only way of doing it. It was like we pulled the safety net out from underneath us. So we had no option but to succeed sort of thing. But that was super difficult because all the money you have with any construction build or anything like that, you're always given the budget and it never stays that way. It always just keeps increasing. So it's really hard. And I think we just leaned on each other. And to be honest, sometimes I have no idea how we even made it through. Sometimes your head's down and you just keep going and going. But it seemed right when we needed it, we'd always find the next chunk of money to help us get to the next stage.
And you had your kids with you. What was it like raising them while managing a massive renovation project?
Oh my goodness. It was tough. I think that we didn't move to Costa Rica to work as much as we were working when we were doing this whole project. But because you're in nature and we were living in Costa Rica, they were super happy kids. We tried to make sure to spend time with them as much as possible. We also had a great community of people to help us with that. So that was a blessing. And it was tough, but I think that the kids were really excited and we tried to keep them involved in the whole process and so that they knew what we were doing. And they actually did great. They were very understanding and very sweet about the whole thing. And
we also made sure, like, even though we'd have really stressful days, we made sure when we came home, as much as we could, we left the stress and everything at the door, like back at the hotel, so that, because we moved there to be closer to our children and really get to know them, where we're in the city, we're working nonstop. So we want to make sure that was something. So that's something we're always very conscious of is when we came home, leave all the baggage and just try to go for a walk, go to the beach, go do something with them, so that they didn't have to feel all that stress, that they could be happy about living in there too. beautiful jungle environment.
And what about your relationship? How did working together on such a high stakes project impact your relationship?
It was tough. I think that any couple, when you're with somebody, you don't work together as well. So not having worked together, it's like different personalities, things, different opinions about how to do things. But surprisingly, it worked out great because it was so stressful. I had someone to lean on during those stressful times when we got home. He could cry and I could cry, and just out of stress, the amount of stress that we were under. So that was really good. And we actually surprisingly worked pretty well together for our first time. I was very surprised and I had no idea what to expect.
I think sometimes it felt like we were taking on the entire world. Like, obviously we had support in that, but a lot of times it felt like there's just a lot of weight. Yeah, I think I can either drive a wedge between two people, but we happened to just come closer, and it just solidified our relationship even more, I think, which is.
Did you ever feel that you wanted to leave everything behind and run away?
I think we were so far in and so deep, like we just had to finish it, especially with the filming. Like, couldn't. Yeah, I think we were just way in over our head.
But there were definitely times where you'd be like, "What have we done?" It seems like the finish line is so far away. I don't know how we're gonna get there, and still like each other at the end as well, which was always fun.
That's that's the biggest achievement, I would say. Let's talk about the journey to reality TV. What made you decide to document your journey for national TV, and how did that change the experience? And also, how did you manage to get that?
So we had talked about maybe documenting it a little bit on our own, but it wasn't like a main priority for us. And where we were living, our neighbor at the time, she happened to be from New York City, and she used to be a doula for the VP of Business Development for a production company. So we weren't really looking for it. We just came home one day and she was like, "Hey, I hope you don't mind. I emailed my friend and I told them about you, and they would like to hear more about your story." So it was really a fluke. And then we did some Zoom interviews with them. They ended up flying down, and they do a sizzle reel. So they spent like a week with us just filming our lives, and then went and sold it. And eventually HGTV picked it up. So it was never a planned thing. We were very excited, but then it also like adds a lot more pressure on too, because now you're trying to manage a construction zone in a country that you've never been before, and with really strict timelines, because you can't miss the high season or your business can be in big trouble. And then on top of all that, you bring in a full camera crew trying to capture it all. So it was pretty stressful. And also now the whole world is seeing all your decisions you're making, and you want to make sure that you're elevating your property to a place that's worthy of an HGTV show.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the behind the scenes. What were some of the most intense moments that didn't make it into the show?
Gosh, there were so many, honestly.
The last episode of our TV show, we decided to get married at our hotel. So that was the opening day, was that wedding. And all of our friends and family flew down to Costa Rica. And we were like, I think the morning of our wedding, there was still an excavator sitting in our parking lot. Like it still wasn't done. And we were losing our minds.
I was filming something before I could go get ready. Like it was crazy. It was like everything down to the wire. I think it was very stressful.
And then it's okay, but then you have to put on a happy face for certain scenes. So it was a cool experience, but that was probably the most pressure we were under, was that right around that one. Because there's also, you're filming all day, making sure construction is going to be completed. But then you're also at night spending time with friends and family. And so you're also hosting and everything. So it was a lot going on there.
What has being on reality TV taught you about storytelling, branding, and personal growth? Because that's quite a particular experience.
It is, definitely. What we think is not interesting apparently is very interesting for people.
Yeah.
Things that are just normal, everyday lives apparently can be very appealing for people watching on reality TV. I was shocked by.
Because I think it's one of those things, when you first move to Costa Rica, when you see a monkey, you lose your mind, right? I can't believe I got to see monkeys. 4 years in, you see a monkey and you go, "Oh, look, there's a monkey." And I think you take for granted what your lifestyle looks like. But I also think it just helped us. I know for me, it's helped me feel like much more confident in front of a camera or speaking in like front of people and doing all that. I think probably same with you as well.
I think trusting your instincts and to not be fearful of what people might think while you're in the process of it, because sometimes you second guess yourself, right?
Yeah.
So I think that whole experience taught me to trust myself a lot more and not worry so much about what people will think.
Yeah.
There are many people listening to this episode and they're dreaming of doing the same, having a great adventure in another country, who knows. What advice would you give to anyone considering a bold career pivot?
We did it all and we made all the mistakes. I think sometimes it helps is to be like, before I make this giant leap, am I leaping in the right direction? I think it helps to have a conversation with someone, a mentor, a business coach, and be like, this is what I'm doing. Because then they can help you talk through it. And that means you make sure when you land, you're prepared for what's coming next. You're like, okay, here we are. It's super exciting, but I knew this could happen. And now I know I'm going to be planned, or I'm just going to have a better plan for how we're going to move forward. But that's all. I think just having that a third party to talk to me sometimes, I think that would be what I would have loved to have had at the start.
Yeah, and it is true. Not like a family or a friend. We do have blinders on when you are focused on something, especially with your career and if you want to make a change. And sometimes you don't want to see those other things. Like the other things that are going to pop up may cause a hiccup down the road, but you don't even see that because you're so enamored with making this one decision.
Yeah.
So I think it is helpful to have someone, a third party, to look at everything and be like, hey, okay, I know you really want to go here, but what about this and this? Or what do you want to do 5 months from now? Instead of just focusing on one goal, think of all the little goals that you need to get to that big goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, you mentioned before that you had doubts different times. How do you push through moments of uncertainty and self-doubt? What advice would you give to anyone that is feeling unsure of what's next?
I think everybody has those scary moments when there's big change, right? So a lot of times when you're about to do this, what you're worried about is what other people are going to think about you. Because your society's, you got to run in this line. And whenever you're going to deviate from there, you get worried, what are people going to think? What if I fail at this? And the one thing I notice is the biggest naysayers are often the people that give you the most props afterwards. And they say, man, I can't believe you did that. I'm so proud of you. I would never have the courage to do something like that. So I think as long as you can, try to zoom out and not focus too much on what other people are saying. Because that's what we had to do, is just kind of say, we had lots of people saying you're crazy. You shouldn't move your family to Costa Rica in a pandemic. But it just felt right. So we just said, you know what, we're following our heart and we're just going to go with it. And I think when you go with your heart, your gut, it's your body telling you, listen, it's time for a change. Let's do it. I don't know. As much as you can get pushed through the fear, just go and jump and make it happen.
Yeah. What about you, Steph?
Very similar. I think that is a very common thing to have fear, especially doing something that you've never done before. It's very cliche, but I think that if you're being called to do something and if you feel it in your gut, even though other people around you are going to be like, oh, you can't do that, or that's so weird. What about this? What about that? There's always going to be a what about. I think in my mind, I thought to myself, you can always, what your life will be here. You were raised here, you're born here, you can always make money. If it doesn't work out, you can always come back. It's one of those things where not to think of it as a life and death kind of decision. You must do this and then you can't ever come back. I think if you look at it as this is something I need to try, I need to do. And if it doesn't work out, what's waiting for you at home? Because you've lived it. So I think, so it takes that fear away of thinking that this is like the end of the road. If you must make it, like if you go somewhere, like you can't ever come back. Of course you can. Everyone can reinvent themselves. What's waiting for you here? We all have built lives here. So you know how to do it. You'll know how to do it again if it doesn't work out. So it's always worth it to try.
Yeah, I like that.
You know?
Yeah, time is going really fast and we are nearly reaching the end of this episode, but we have still a few more questions. So first of all, looking back, what's the biggest takeaway from your journey?
Oh my goodness, the biggest takeaway. What did you have? I think that it was that we're resilient.
Yeah, absolutely.
So many things that I thought would break other couples and other people, because it wasn't just like one obstacle. There was just so many that popped up. It was like layers of obstacles. And I think that if we could go through all of that, we are okay. We'll be good, whatever comes next.
Because I think we were pretty much broken a billion times doing it. But we did, you're right. It's just, we can always persevere and keep going.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway.
So now really the last question that we ask to all of our guests, Steph and Luke, if you could give yourself a piece of advice, what would you say to your younger self based on all this incredible journey you had?
Don't quit your job. Stay. No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
Well, it could be.
No, it was. I think going back, I think it would be. I would never change anything that we've done. If possible, plan it out a little bit better at the start. That's all. But again, that all goes out the window when all of a sudden you have a timeline and a TV show and everything else going in. Yeah, that's all I would say. It's just if you can plan a little bit more as to know where you're going. But other than that,
I think my younger self, I would always probably say, just give yourself a bit more credit. Like, you can do all of this. Trust yourself. Because I think when you're young, you are so plagued with indecision, and like you always second guess everything, and you're so worried about what everyone thinks and always seeking that approval that you lose your own approval. Like, you need to just be okay with yourself. I think that, and then that in turn puts you in a better position to make decisions and trust yourself. Like, especially with your career and with things that you're capable of. So I think that's probably what I would have told myself. You're capable.
you can do it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Steph and Luke, for sharing your incredible journey and insights with us today. And a last message for our listeners, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and tune in next week for a new inspirational episode of The Career Changers. Thank you.
Thank you.